big joy. James Broughton was a community organizer in Chicago. James Broughton was a high priest in the Himalayas. James Broughton was Betty Davis. James Broughton was, well, oh hell, a lot of things. And James Broughton was someone who smashed stereotypes completely, and therefore I can't give him one. The bubbling, the vivacity, and I think with James it would be exuberant. I had no idea. Isn't that interesting? Well, he was exuberant. But what is it then about the word? There are people enthusiastic, but that's not exuberant. There are Bob Hope jokesters, that's not exuberant. There are people with gentle humor that's luminous, that is not exuberant. I mean, there's something kind of unique there. He wasn't ashamed of being exuberant. I don't think he tried to be exuberant, so it's authentic. And he just was, and it sort of, over dinner he was exuberant, and on a walk he was exuberant, and maybe waking up he was kind of exuberant. So he did have this rare quality. So in other words, what you're telling me is he knew he was exuberant. And that's nice. I like that. With James? Well, what's it like to spend time with anybody? I was going to say, I mean, you get to know people when you spend time with them, I guess, unless they're unknowable, and there are those too. Well, I mean, he'd be bubbling over. He had opinions about everything, I think, and wasn't afraid to express them. Also knew how to express them. Well, he had fun with life, actually, and I'm not sure I know too many people who do have fun with life. Life is a struggle, and it's a lot of things. And many people give up on having fun with life, I think. Or he would look at any aspect of life and, of course, see the absurdity of it. I feel kind of close to him in this regard because much of life, as I see it, is theater of the absurd. Utterly. The U.S. government may be theater of the absurd. Most churchianity, theater of the absurd. The struggle for fame and ego, utterly absurd. So I can understand the people who do rebel and try to dig a cave and do any number of things to handle this. But well, you know what I mean by absurd. The theater of the absurd is so wonderful. It's ironic. And it's not literal. How can you be literal? I don't understand that at all. I'm always telling people you're being rational about a non-rational situation. Are you out of your mind? Well, anyway, he and I were on the same wavelength, I think, with this, which was nice, because to have companions, people on the same wavelength, is very nice. Not just happy, the saner you'll be. Or, as in the old film The King of Hearts, maybe then you'll end up being one of the few sane people in an utterly insane world or situation, which incidentally is exactly where I think we are. Again, I feel a sameness kind of with James on that. Well, spirituality is such a cliche that it's almost impossible even to discuss it at this point, I think. Religion, God knows what sense to try to make out of that, particularly at the moment where there is Islam, which no one understands at all, obviously. There is Judaism, a bit of which politically is Zionism. And then Christianity is a total mess. I mean, it's an incredible situation. And then you have very sincere people in all three categories, I think, wanting to pray, trying to make sense out of their lives. And then you have religion making it very difficult for them to make sense out of their lives with it. With James, everything had a passion. And so any matter of faith or spirituality, the only thing that would interest James would be that part of it that partook of passion. He wouldn't be interested in kind of churchianity of the Eisenhower administration. That's what I'm talking about. I also feel that, and I wasn't really cognizant that we were similar to such an extent in some interesting ways, but I feel, and I have a sense that James felt, although I don't think we ever discussed this specifically, well, I feel that spirituality and sexuality are a part of everyone's life. And that there is entitlement there. One is entitled to that. And I think the people who drive the wedge between them don't understand and can do great harm. Because some people are saying then your spirituality can be natural, but your sexuality can't. You have to be in control of it. And much of it would put you into hell anyway. Again, we're back to the absurd here a little bit, in that I say obviously, meaning my point of view, and that's wrong and stupid of me, and I apologize. But from my point of view, everyone has spirituality and has sexuality. Whatever you do with it is your business. Knowing James, and from the times that we did talk, it seems to me that he very much epitomized this, felt it. He was relaxed in it, in both spirituality and sexuality. I'm sorry for people who are so uptight about both of them. They can't enjoy sexuality at all, and the spirituality must be horrible for them, with its connotations of hell. James was just free completely from this nonsense or garbage. He understood those gifts. And I think he felt, as I do, that the best way to appreciate and enjoy the gifts is to let the gifts be. Well, James's spiritual path isn't terribly complicated. I mean, his spirituality was never in a box, and it was embracing any number of avenues. It was flexible, and it never claimed any sort of absolutism. So it offered people the option of being themselves and then finding what aspect of spirituality would represent them or would speak to them. He wasn't inventing a new religion or anything, and of course, it also included his critique of, well, maybe a dried up religion that kind of wasn't communicating with people. Oh, sermon. You've also got confession here. You on your seat there. Sit up and sing out. Sing out for Eros. Love is unbelievable, so it must be believed. Believe your own loving, your passion and folly, your incredible hopes. Praise the marvels of joy tube and love pump. If you must feel tortured, respect your misery and be happy about it. Only the nonsensical is at ease with the absolute. Listen to your angels, ripening your secrets. Come to beautiful terms with the God in your body, with the body of your God. Share flesh with others. Wake love, make love, clasp hearts, exuberate, and never look back till you are far out of sight. Wow. I love it. I mean, I'm not James, I wouldn't write as well, but the point is, I could have written the same thing in terms of, yeah. Shall we see what confession is? Confession. Even if I never arrive, I shall keep departing. I believe in the unreachable, the unlikely, and the unmentionable. Moses never got there. Jesus never got there. Buddha went there, but he came back. Lao Tzu simply packed up and left. Anywhere that I await my traveler's alert, I rely upon the dimensionless, the immediate, and the imperishable. Imagination is my praise of truth. The beauty of man is my hope and my sorrow. Wherever I may be landing or hoping for takeoff, I swear by affection, exuberance, and clarity. Everything. Well, it's the passion, the humor, the giving up control, I mean, all the things that I think faith requires. And if we're holding on so tight to life, there isn't any, we're not dealing in faith, we're living in holding on tight to life. Yeah, and he isn't. He would have made a great bishop. Well, I mean, he understands. And he's acting out of love, not exaggerating pain and relentless punishment and all that. Well, you brought up something interesting here, actually, because I think in so many areas we've settled for kind of easy answers. And then we move on to the next paragraph. And I think, I'm not going to get into this here, but I think with gay marriage, we've done that to a great extent. I think it's enormously complicated. I think all marriage is enormously complicated. And what the hell are we talking about? And there was a time when it was possession. And unfortunately, there is a time where it's still possession. So, and then has it anything to do with children or not? And so it's vastly complex. But then you get somebody who just wants to make a political point and kind of does so and attempts to move on without stopping and saying, this is complicated. It gets back then to really a definition of faith or religion or spirituality or any of those words, and they're complicated. Largely because most of us do carry some childhood luggage around. And don't do anything with it, and so it continues to wound us. I think that's a part of it. Well, simplicity sounds easy, but it really isn't easy, because it means getting rid of some things, and obviously it means becoming more childlike. And when we're just so dead serious and we're burning each other at the stake, it's not, I don't find much simplicity in that. Well, what's interesting about the question is that, in one sense, I think nobody has any idea what any two people are doing in either a love or a sex situation. I mean, you can't draw diagrams for everybody, and people are quite different. And so some people who would appear on the outside to be miserable are very happy, and some people who get the good housekeeping seal of approval are living in hell. So consequently, I mean, you can't kind of generalize about a lot of things, I think. You asked, what brought that up in my mind was when you mentioned bisexuality, and maybe everyone is quadruple sexual. That might be a good way to get started. Because
I wish I'd learned that in elementary school.
Well, I had one relationship that with someone bisexual, and there was a time when I said there weren't any bisexuals, which is absurd. And then there's everything. So maybe we should we could coin the word right here and throw it out there, quadruple sexual. Remind the New York Times it began here. But the point is, we don't know about everything with each other, and perhaps even ourselves sometimes. We're all exploring, I think. You know, with some relationships, you understand that they're lasting, and some are always on the thinnest of ice. There's every kind of relationship. I think it has to do at a level with what does someone want and what are they looking for. Because if someone wants just Audrey Hepburn romance and someone else wants the solidity and structure, they might need to go to a counselor or a therapist at some point and talk about it. They're rather different things. But on the other hand, maybe even in that difference, there can be they can come together in terms of understanding each other, helping each other, really having a relationship. So Joel and James are kind of role models, certainly for me. Two people who obviously have learned and are learning how to live together. No easy task. I always say it's as important to... you can't just like and not love, and you can't just love and not like. It's one of my cliches, but I think it's true. You look at some relationships that are quite wonderful. I think James and Joel would fit there. I mean, nobody's saying it was all a bed of roses, but it wasn't meant to be, and wouldn't that be boring? I love the book title, I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. So why did Middle America think there was a book, Rose Gardens, and that people were entitled to rose gardens, because rose gardens are a part of it. But even some roses have thorns, of course. Yeah, I think James and Joel clearly loved each other, and They liked each other. That was quite clear. And that's another whole area that's very important. And then clearly they loved each other. And it's sad when you see people who have some form of love but perhaps don't like each other. That's awfully complicated. And then you have somebody, talking about love, but they epitomized, they summed up the dual thing there very well. Just in their everyday life together and their relationships with other people, the rhythm of the life. That's how it manifests itself. I mean, you're not looking for manifesting in great chords on the organ and these massive things. It's the little things that tell the story, I think, always. James as an elder. Well, for me, he was an elder. At that time, I was maybe fighting it or not wanting to be an elder. It reminds me the other day, a 45-year-old gay man said to me, I don't want to be an adult. Because I was talking about how the youth need the adult, and the adult need the elder, and the elder need the ancestor. Well, then he throws a monkey wrench. I don't want to be an elder. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so I was like the adult who didn't want to be an elder, I guess, or an adult. Well, I definitely didn't want to be an elder. Part of that was reacting to the kind of abasement and repudiation of elders so often in the gay community, and that we aren't instructed about these roles. And so, you could say, how in the hell am I supposed to be an elder? What does that mean? So, anyway, he was, and he handled it so beautifully. Because he handled it without exerting heavy control, always with humor and flexibility, openness. And there are problems in aging, some physical, some obviously psychological and spiritual. I mean, the best way to do it is to accept it and enjoy it. And when some other people need there to be an elder, be there. But don't do the comic act, like, elder? I don't know what you're talking about. Are there any elders? Mm-hmm. There are some elders. So I'm enjoying, actually, in many ways, the role. I mean, I'm content, happy, whatever those words are. Terribly fortunate. Very grateful. And since I'm in community and want to be, then I do accept certain roles that are needed and that I can fill. And so one is elder. So you're not running around acting like Moses. And James was so helpful because he was light about it, not heavy, and always his humor was, which was so great. And also his relaxation within himself was kind of maybe the best thing he had, wasn't it? In other words, James was relaxed within James. And that's kind of the nicest gift to be able to give anybody, I think. Because if you're not relaxed within yourself, I don't think you can be of any help to anybody very much. What did James mean by follow your own weird? I think he was talking about following your own authenticity. Life's weird, and we're all weird. So let's get over that one. And so if you can laugh about it and be flexible and help someone else with their weirdness and enjoy your own, I mean, that's the beginning of everything in a sense, isn't it? Thinking about death. How often do you think about death? Death thinks about you all the time. Death is fatally in love with you and me, and his lust is known to be relentless. Life is an equally persistent lover. He was desiring each of us before we were born. I try to remain faithful to him, but I know the relationship can't go on forever. Life relishes my body heat, my heart beating, my blood, my semen, even my steamy notions. Death cherishes what is cool and mysterious in me, all that is shadowy and perverse like him. I like to think of death awaiting our rendezvous in a candlelit corner of an intimate cafe, where he will regale me with scandalous tales of misbehavior in other worlds. Yet in the end, it is life that wears us out. At that crosswalk, what will the traffic bear? Shouldn't we think about death more often? Death is thinking about us all the time. I love that. When he says, death cherishes what is cool and mysterious in me, I think death cherishes what is not cool and not mysterious in me, too. And then he says, death cherishes all that is shadowy and perverse like him. And I might say death cherishes what is not shadowy and not perverse. So I'm avoiding a stereotype that he seems to be involved with here. Also, I don't think death would regale me with scandalous tales of misbehavior in other worlds in a candlelit corner of an intimate cafe. Death might just shut up and be there. In other words, I think it helps not to stereotype death. Mm-hmm. I haven't talked much about death with sitting around over a dinner table or having a martini or something. I don't recall many conversations about death. I recall a few conversations about death with people who were dying, but death hasn't been a popular conversation subject for many. I don't think Merv Griffin did death a lot, did he? Johnny Carson. That isn't a dinner conversation as much. I don't know what talking about death would really mean. It could encompass a number of things. And included in that would be goodbye. I've seen them. I didn't see them as a film expert. I enjoyed them. While I worked in Hollywood, I wasn't editing film and I wasn't a director. And so Mark and I come to film differently because Mark studied film in school and is very interested in it and knowledgeable about it technically, and I never have been. I really have more of an emotional take on films. I'm very emotional about film. So it's the story rather than the technique. I might put Ernst Lubitsch into the history of film. I might do DeMille. I'd be very critical of DeMille. But in other words, James, I don't think, put himself into that particular, it's a sort of star category thing here, isn't it? And I kind of stopped there. as important as film is in my life, because I do love film. And James loved film, and think of all those films that he made. In fact, film probably was closer to him than writing, but I can't follow him there. Poetry. James was an outsider in poetry. So much of poetry in the United States, anyway, has been claimed by academia, and there's almost an academy of self-congratulation and inclusion and exclusion. And inclusion would mean that you're anthologized in a certain way, and certain critics single you out, and it's a very snobbish kind of situation, I think. I think James almost gloried in not being included. And so again, he had his exuberance and his individuality and himself, but he wasn't really looking to be in the canon on that one. I don't think it interested him. So I don't think he was hurt when he wasn't. And therefore he stands as a bit of an outside creature, with a real message for a number of people working in poetry who also want that experience and don't want to be boxed. Because what's happened in certainly all writing is the boxing. But I think poetry particularly, because poetry is so queer, so quirky, and then to get a few non-queer, non-quirky people who actually put it in a box and claim it is amusing. And James would be the first to see that it was amusing. With the academic approach to poetry, there are clearly rules. That's what I'm talking about. And in not going by the rules, James was setting up other criteria. So that's quite precise. Well, his whole style is not within the rules. Including celebrating gay life. Because if you remember, academia, until quite recently, wouldn't acknowledge Walt Whitman was gay. So that's a bit of a stretch. Well, I love the freshness, the joy he was taking in the poetry. His poetry was, or is, an experience, and you can chuckle, you can laugh. You don't have to be dour and wear a necktie and a proper coat to read the poetry. Big joy. James was big joy and is big joy because he's not here anymore, but he's here in his work. And so you can experience the big joy right now, and therefore he's here. The last question, all my life I've spoken. So like tonight we have 5,000 people. It's gone well. Yeah. And I'm on the verge of a standing ovation. And then there's the last question is, I am destroyed. The evening is destroyed. Civil war ensues. The people are fighting each other in the auditorium, and the police usher me out.
So you're ready for that one, then?
You're never ready. This is it, and I am it, and you are it, and so is that, and he is it, and she is it, and it is it, and that is that. Oh, it is this. and it is thus, and it is them, and it is us, and it is now, and here it is, and here we are. So this is it.